I asked Google, did James Adair know that the North American Indians were Israelites? I asked Google, did James Adair know that the North American Indians were Israelites? And I was surprised at the answer. Anyway, it's another video. Hopefully you find this one edifying as well as exhorting. Shalom to you, brothers and sisters of the household of faith. And as usual, all praises and glory is due to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai Bashem Rakakwadash. Now, I'm not going to make this video too long. I was watching a video that Elder Pastor put up, and since we're in the Sabbath, there's no better thing to do than try to do as many videos as you can possibly do. So hopefully this video will be edifying. The title of the video is "Why Do You Wish to Sail West?" and he's going into the scene from the movie starring the French actor Gerard Depardieu, and he's going into the scene where Gerard Depardieu plays an explorer in the movie Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, and he desires to sail west, right? Trying to find, according to what Esau is teaching in their schools, trying to find a passage to Asia, as in India. Anyway, we know that that's not the case. Cristobal Colon, who was actually a Jesuit priest, right? He was hired by the rich banking families of the Edomites, all right? In particular, the Borgia family, the descendants of the Borgia family. And his job was to go to the other side of the world. And this is pursuant, which even in the movie, they showed the scene, and Pastor is going into it. They showed the scene where Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, played by Gerard Depardieu, is talking about when the what's his name, the priest, you know, his name doesn't come to mind right now. The priest asked him, you know, how you're going to get to this journey, and he was Cristobal Colon, according to the movie, he was saying the routes he would take. And then he mentioned Esdras, the prophet Esdras. He doesn't mention the passage that we normally read, 2nd Esdras 13 and 40, but he mentions Esdras knew about the passage to the New World. So this is what Elder Pastor is going into in this video. Why do you wish to sail west? Which that was the question the priest asked Cristobal Colon, played by Gerard Depardieu, according to the movie Conquest of Paradise, 1492. So you want to check this video out that's going on live right now. What is the 666 Mark II GMS Truth? That's Elder Pastor's channel. So inspired by that, I asked Google, did James Adair know that the North American Indians were Israelites? Now, this is what James Adair looks like, as you can see. James Adair, an American historian. So he was an American historian, and he was born in 1709 in the country of Antrim, the county of Antrim, United Kingdom. Now, in the previous video, I'd said he was a Scotsman. Actually, he was from Ireland. I found out he was born in Ireland. All right, born 1709, died 1783. So he got, let me see, yeah, he got his 70 years. According to scriptures, we're allotted 70 years if anything more than that, by strength, you get 80 years, right? And this man, for the majority of his life, he traded with the so-called North American Indians, and he was familiar. He was a historian, and he was familiar with the laws of the Israelites. So while he lived around the North American Indians and traded with them, he noticed a lot of their ways goes back to the laws of the Israelites, the ancient laws of the Israelites. So he came to the conclusion that these individuals have to be one of the lost tribes of the nation of Israel. And indeed, he's correct. Okay? According to what we teach, that the so-called North American Indians, they come out the tribe of Gad, which is of the nation of Israel. And you have Gad and you have Reuben. All right, Gad and Reuben. Reuben is the so-called Seminole Indians. All right, and Gad is the so-called North American Indians. So let's read a little bit about James Adair. All right, let's get the stats on this guy, James Adair, which, like I said, you can clearly see he looks like, which I said in the, I believe I said in the previous video, you can clearly see he looks like a so-called white man. But he, being a so-called Irish, he could have been a Jake. This guy here could have been a Jake. That's a painting of James Adair, right? And he sure enough told the truth about the so-called North American Indians, that's for sure. James Adair, circa 1709, circa 1775, authored what is arguably the most significant 18th century work on the Southeastern Indians, the history of the American Indians, published in London in 1775. The book, A Cultural and Historical Study of the Catawbas, Cherokees, Creeks, Choctaws, and Chickasaw Indians, is based on Adair's first-hand observations derived from his 40-year career as a deerskin trader among several southeastern Indian tribes. Adair is widely believed to have been born in County Antrim, Ireland in 1709, although no evidence to support the contention exists. There's one account that I read said he was a Scot, but I'll go with that, that he's Irish. In his book, Adair dates his entry into the deerskin trade at 1735, when he briefly traded with the Catawba Indians. He quickly moved to more lucrative Cherokee trade, and soon afterward began trading with the Chickasaws. Adair entered the trade at a dangerous time in international relations. The French in New Orleans and Mobile, then part of the French colony of Louisiana, were attempting to gain Indian allies at the expense of the British. So, you can read about this, the history. I just want to get to the point, dealing with, but even at the beginning of the page, it says he wrote the most significant 18th century work on the Southeastern Indians, that being the book, The History of the American Indians. And it was published in London in 1775. So it says the book, A Cultural and Historical Study of the Catawbas, Cherokees, Creeks, Choctaws, and Chickasaw Indians. He came to the conclusion that they're of the lost tribes of the nation of Israel. Okay? So now, as you can see in Google, I asked Google, did James Adair know that the North American Indians were Israelites? And AI Overview came back with this. Yes, James Adair was convinced that the North American Indians were descendants of the Israelites and wrote his 1775 book, The History of the American Indians, to prove this theory. He spent decades, 4 to be exact, almost 5 decades. He spent decades among southeastern tribes, including the Cherokee and Chickasaw, and based his argument on comparisons of religious rites, customs, and language. Right, and it's outlined in the book. It's outlined in the book, different religious rites and customs, and especially the religious rites and customs that the so-called North American Indians were doing. It reminded him of the religious rites and customs of the Israelites. And language, and the language was close to the Hebrew. His work presented 23 arguments supporting this claim, though modern scholars view his conclusion as flawed. Yeah, because you know the main reason why? Because they want to keep us collectively, and that's pursuant to Psalms, the 83rd chapter. They want to keep us away from our nationality. Because they know once the 12 tribes come back in unison, right, beginning with the elect, that the Edomites, they know, the ones that are mainly trying to hide this knowledge. That's why you don't hear too much about James Adair. The wicked elite of Esau, which is trying to bury this knowledge of who the real Israelites are, they know that once we come together as a people, that they're pretty much done as a nation, the Edomites that are in rulership. Now, if you go in the book of Psalms 83, right, this is why like it says here, and this is from Google, this is why modern scholars view his conclusion as flawed. What conclusion? That the so-called North American Indians are descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. And there's a reason for that. Here it is right here. Psalms, the 83rd chapter. And the 4th verse. They have said, well, let me start the 3rd verse. Now, these modern day scholars, right, you know, they're Edomites. All right. I'm pretty sure that the majority of them are Edomites, and they work also for the top hidden elite. Okay, so it says, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people. And those modern day scholars are part of the crafty counsel. Excuse me. And consulted against thy hidden ones. Right, they want to keep they want to keep the true Israelites hidden to their true nationality. Like the so-called North American Indians. They want to keep them hidden to their true nationality of who they really are. That they're one of the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. They want to keep them away from that information, as well as the so-called Negroes keep them away from that information, because they know there's power in that information. If we were to come back as a nation, then they know their rulership is pretty much up. That's one of the signs of the end of Esau's rulership, that these 12 families would come back together and rule as a nation. So Esau wants to keep the individual families, the tribes, away from that information or that truth that they're really of the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So we're reading it right here. It says, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people. Who's the Lord's people? The Israelites. All 12 tribes. And consulted against thy hidden ones. And they're hidden to their nationality, their true nationality. You know, another scripture that backs that up is, well, actually, there's many scriptures. We can go to Isaiah 1 and 3. It says, the ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib. But Israel doth not know. Right, the true Israelites don't know that they're Israelites, that they're the Israelites, because they have been destroyed from their nationality. That's why it says, but Israel doth not know, my people doth not consider. When they came into captivity, the Israelites, one of the things that the captors did, the owners of the Lord's people, one of the things that they did was destroy them from their true nationality by putting, fake titles on us Israelites. And the Bible calls that the covering cast. That's Isaiah 25:7, which the Lord said he would destroy, the covering cast and the veil that is spread over all nations. See, North American Indian, that's a veil that's spread upon those people to keep them from knowing that they're of the tribe of Gad of the nation of Israel. See? And even James Adair came to that conclusion. He didn't say what tribe they are, but he said they're of the descendants of the Israelites, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He said that they are descendants based upon their customs, their religious rites, the language, etc. I just read it to you, he had 22 examples of proof to support that. Okay, and it's outlined in the book, History of the North American Indians. Okay, so that was Isaiah 1:3. So if we go to Jeremiah, now the Lord had said we as Israelites, we would discontinue from our heritage. So that's exactly what happened to the so-called North American Indians. They discontinued from their heritage, and the term North American Indian was put on them. Remember, the word America goes back to Amerigo Vespucci, which it was a cartographer by the name of Martin Walsey-Muller. This is in 1507. Martin Walsey-Muller labeled this place America after Amerigo Vespucci. So what would the so-called North American Indian was here long before 1507. They were here dwelling in the Americas, right? So what were they before they were called American Indians? What were they? What was their true nationality? All right. So that's the question. This is Jeremiah 17:4. And thou even thyself shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. What's part of the heritage besides our land? Our nationality, that we the Hebrew Israelites of the respective tribes, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, etc., right? So the Lord said that we would discontinue from our heritage. That's why the majority of our people don't know who they are. Okay? And this is where we come in. Our job is to bring them back to their true nationality through these scriptures. Now, the majority of them won't listen, but the elect of them will. Because this knowledge, this truth is only for the elect. Romans 11:7. All right? It says that we would discontinue from our heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. Right now is the land of America. Our enemies are the Edomites and all the other nations. For you have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. Right? We disobeyed the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, so he put those curses on us. Matter of fact, he said we would become a byword. North American Indian is a byword. Okay, if you go into Deuteronomy 28:37, right? Deuteronomy 28:37, and thou, these are the curses. You read the 15th verse, it tells you the curses that the Lord would put on the Israelites for disobedience, like we just read in Jeremiah 17:4. So this is Deuteronomy 28:37, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword. North American Indian is a byword for who those people really are, which is of the tribe of Gad, of the nation of Israel. So we became so-called Negroes. They became a byword. Negro is a byword. Negro is a byword. West Indian is a byword. So we became, instead of having our true nationality, according to the Bible, and being called that, we're now being called by bywords. All right, a proverb and a byword among all nations, begin with the Edomites, where the Lord shall lead thee. When you read that in the NLT, it says, you will become an object of horror, right? The state that we're in. Ridicule, right? All the nations, they laugh at us. They, we're the butt of everyone's joke, beginning with the so-called Negroes, of course. So we would become a ridicule and mockery among all the nations to which the Lord sends you. Exactly. See that? So Adair's central thesis, he believed Native Americans were a lost tribe of Israel and tried to prove this by finding parallels between them and ancient Hebrews. Now this is in Google. His evidence, he pointed to similarities he observed in their division into tribes, religious practices, and calendar systems, such as lunar cycles and annual festivals. Right, lunar cycles. According to the ancient Hebrew Israelites, the moon was used for the calibration of time, lunar cycles. As a matter of fact, to back that up, you go into the Apocrypha, what is that? Ecclesiasticus 43, I believe it is. Let me see. Ecclesiasticus 43, it says, let's read a little bit about the moon. Ecclesiasticus 43 and 6. He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. For the moon is the sign of feasts, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. So that explains the lunar cycles. The word lunar goes back to moon, right? It says, as a matter of fact, luna is the Latin/Italian word for moon, right? Moon, the Italian/Latin word for moon is luna. So it says the month is called after her name, and the word month comes from moon. So that backs up the lunar cycles that James Adair observed that the so-called North American Indians, that they kept the lunar cycle. So that means they kept the Sabbath according to the new moon. The Sabbath is regulated by the new moon. And then 6 days later, you're going into the seventh day, you have the next Sabbath. All right? Esau keeps the Sabbath according to the 7 days Sabbath according to the sun. That's why he says Sunday is the Sabbath day, Sunday, which goes back to the sun, worshiping the sun. Now, the only way Sunday could be the Sabbath is if it fell on a new moon. If the new moon happened to fall on Sunday, which back then we didn't give the days names. That came out of the Greeks. That was a heathenistic practice. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, those were named after phony gods. Okay, you can Google it, what Monday's named after, what Tuesday's named after. Those were named after phony so-called Greek gods. Okay? We didn't give the days names. The ancient Hebrew Israelites, that is, didn't give the days names. You had the first day, the second day. When you read the scriptures, it said on the first day of the second month, on the fifth day of the fifth month, example, et cetera, So it says the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, right? And that word week, like you got 4 weeks make a month. The word week, W-E-E-K, means change. So what changes during the week? The phases of the moon. Each day the moon phases change. You have the full moon. You have the trying to remember the different stages. You have the full moon. You have the first quarter. You have the what is it called? You got the full moon. You got the you got the new moon. Then you got the first quarter. Then you got the full moon, because from the new moon to the first quarter, that's 7 days. 7 days to the 14th day, that's the full moon, right? The full moon. The new moon begins where it's totally dark. You just see a sliver of light. But by the 14th day, the moon is full with light. This is why it says wonderfully in her changing. And then and then you have the You have the waning period. You have first you have the where the moon becomes full. That takes 14 days, and then the last 14 days is the waning period. The waning period, all right. And then the cycle repeats itself. So increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, especially during the full moon, shining in the firmament of heaven. So that backs up the lunar cycles that James Adair observed that the so-called North American Indians kept, and the annual festivals. All right. So modern perspective, while Adair's conclusion about their origins is considered flawed today, his book is still valued by historians as a detailed eyewitness account of southeastern Native American cultures before a European influence became widespread. Yeah, what's the point is that there are Israelites that been living in the Americas since 722, 724 BC. And that goes back to Esdras and the account written in Second Esdras, the 13th chapter, the 40th verse, which they reference Esdras in the movie Conquest of Paradise, 1492, starring Gerard Depardieu, who played Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus. So all the information is coming out. So I asked Google the question, did James Adair, which was a real person, did James Adair know that the North American Indians were Israelites? And according to his book, History of the North American Indian by James Adair, proves that he did know. Okay, and he had 22 examples of proof to back it up. And it's all outlined in the book, how they kept the seasons, the festivals, their language, etc., etc. So hopefully you found that one edifying, and we'll see you in the next video. Or I'll see you in the next video, rather.